Hello class, this is October 13th. We're in our week 8 for HPE 108. We're going to talk a little bit about lesson planning today as our overall major subject. But before getting started, I wanted to talk a little bit about the midterm. You all did a pretty nice job on that midterm. You can see your grades up available on D2L. If any of you are wondering about maybe extra credit points or anything, we can discuss that at a later point. Myself and the professor who teaches the other section have decided that if points are needed to improve a student's grade, perhaps we'll give a little bit of extra credit maybe at the end of the semester, but not at this point. I'm unsure as to whether or not you can see the questions that you got wrong on the midterm so that you can learn from them. But we can discuss that next week because I think it's important that you can see where you got questions wrong so that you can learn from those mistakes. So we'll discuss more about the midterm next week, but just know that the questions on the midterm that was a sampling. So there's a lot more questions that we could have asked during the midterm, but we decided to do a small sampling of them, and that a lot of the knowledge that you had studied for but was not present on the exam are things that are going to be really prevalent in the materials coming up for the rest of the semester, which is why we found it important to have you study and memorize that material. So, for example, a lot of the little nitty gritty things that you studied for the midterm exam, for example, the teaching styles or the learning codes. Those are all going to be present in these upcoming assignments, the lesson plan assignments and the video analysis assignments. So you will be glad that you studied those and that you have those in your memory so you don't have to look back as much and relearn content from earlier weeks. So we'll talk more about the midterm next week. I really wanted to get the lesson plan PowerPoint to you so that you can do your lesson plan assignment. I'm still working to get you feedback on those initial lesson plans. So if you're somebody who submitted the example lesson plan or the sample early to get feedback, I'll have that feedback to you within the next day or two. So you can read the comments that I write in the comment bubbles when you download it to Microsoft Word. So let's get started. Here's our D2L page. Just wanted to show you the homework here is going to be that lesson plan assignment number 1. You're going to review the lesson plan PowerPoint, which I'm going to actually go through with you over the recording. And the lesson plan recording from last time, which was in week 5, you'll see when Dr. Comiskey went over it. He goes over it in more great detail, but I just wanted to go over some of the components myself so that you can really, so that I can just make sure that I'm teaching it to you as well. Example lesson plan is called sample lesson plan down below. So if you need a sample in terms of like what I'm looking for, you can refer to that lesson plan. Your second assignment is going to be this video analysis number 1. And in order to do that, you need to watch the video for the video analysis. So again, that's down below. There's a video for video analysis. You're going to watch that. And in analyzing that teacher, you'll complete the video analysis assignment. I'll go over that. I'll show you what that looks like. And then you're going to read the effective classroom management document that's also listed below. I'm going to add to this, you have a 4th assignment that I need for you to complete, and that is the lesson plan quiz 1, which is also due next Tuesday. So all 4 of those assignments are going to be due for you. So here's our PowerPoint that I'm going to be referring to today. Here's just a lesson plan template. You don't need to open this unless you need a blank document. It's just more for your reference. Here's the sample lesson plan if you need to refer to a completed lesson plan to look at kind of phrasing and wording and what I'm looking for. This is a document that discusses or shows the domain verbs, so verbs that you're going to use in your objectives for the psychomotor domain, the cognitive domain, and the affective domain. These are the verbs or those action words that you're going to be using to help develop those objectives. So for example, a psychomotor objective would be the student will be able to demonstrate appropriate strategies for man-to-man defense. demonstrate would be a verb here that I would use in my objective, and it's for the psychomotor domain. And so this document is going to be really important when you're writing your objectives. So it's going to be one that you want to download and save. Here's a guide to writing educational objectives. This document really explains what we're looking for and how to phrase things, how to use terminology and standards, and some of those domain verbs. So this document really goes into detail about how to write objectives. So very important for you to read this, and I'll address in a more short way how to write objectives in my PowerPoint. Here's the lesson plan recording from Dr. Comiskey from week 5. Again, you can review that. Here's our lesson plan assignment 1. So as you can see, it's due next Tuesday. This one is graded, and it is worth a considerable amount of points in your overall grade. There's only 2 lesson plans that you're writing, and I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it's worth 20% of your grade. So you definitely want to make sure that you spend a good amount of time doing this and making sure that you get things right before submitting. Here's your video for your video analysis, and here's your video analysis assignment. So here's your video analysis assignment where it's going to guide you through watching this video. This video is a woman that is teaching an elementary lesson for underhand throwing, and so you're going to watch her teach. It's a very short video. It's not an entire lesson, but what you're going to do in the video analysis assignment is kind of deconstruct her lesson and talk to me about feedback and opportunities to learn and the different teaching styles that she utilized and things like that. So that this is really getting at your ability to utilize the information that you studied for the midterm. This is going to be that final document you're going to read under effective, it's effective classroom management. We're getting into classroom management next week, so I want you to have read this article about effective classroom management. You can also find your quiz under quizzes, where it's called lesson plan quiz. Okay, and again, it's due next week before class. Okay, so make sure you get that done. Likely you'll be able to see part of your grade, but some of the questions are open-ended that I'll have to go back and grade them myself later on. But you might be able to see at least some of the multiple choice and true false. I believe there's only 10 or 11 questions on that lesson plan quiz. All right, so to get started here, why don't we, before I get into my lesson plan, I want to just go over really briefly the analysis, the video analysis with you, which I should have just kept up here. So here's our video analysis assignment. This is the first one. What you're going to do is watch video for video analysis 1, which is on your D2L I just showed you. Provide specific examples of things that the teacher said or did during this short lesson clip within each of these categories. For the majority of these answers, you're going to also need to provide direct quotes, so specifically what the teacher said, and a timestamp of at what minute during the video she said it, which will just show me that you watched the video, but also in case I need to clarify something for you, I know exactly what time point you were talking about, so I can really help to reframe your thinking. So the way you'll do this is this example here. If you tell me it's at 1 minute and 3 seconds or 1:3, I'll know that you mean at 1 minute and 3 seconds. The teacher did whatever. So I can show you a little bit more what that looks like. But just know that in order to, if you just tell me what generally it's not going to earn enough credit. You need to tell me direct quotes for most of these and a timestamp so that I can reframe your thinking. There are parts A to part G on this assignment, so make sure you do the whole thing. Part A, opportunities to learn. Do you think the students had an appropriate opportunity to learn? Describe your response. So you studied what opportunity to learn is for the midterm. So tell me, just based on this very short video, do you feel the students had an appropriate amount of opportunity to learn or not? Part B is looking at feedback. So I'm looking at these three different kinds: general feedback, specific feedback, and corrective feedback. So make sure you remember the difference between specific and corrective. Specific referring particularly to the skill. Usually it's something along the lines of, I like how you did blah, blah, blah. And corrective feedback being something that's more so relating to correcting some type of a skill. So more so, hey, next time you do that skill, make sure to do blah, 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 or fix this critical element. So for each of these, you'll need 3 examples of general feedback, 3 examples of specific, and 3 for corrective. Just for reference, she has approximately at least 10 in each category, so you have a lot to choose from in the event that you miss something. This is where I'm going to need a direct quote and a timestamp. So for example, great job, Jenny. It was the direct quote, and at 1 minute and 21 seconds is when the teacher said that. So that's how you're going to write this. So perhaps I think it's pretty evident that great job, Jenny is very general. It's a general feedback statement because it's not specific to a skill or correcting a skill. So I'd put that under general feedback. Great job, Jenny, and this is the timestamp. Now, just so that you know, I totally made this one up, and she did not say good job, Jenny, at 1 minute and 21, so don't put that as your answer because that is not right. Just wanted to give you an example. So, you'll do these feedback pieces. Teaching styles. So tell me, what teaching style was this teacher using? You could justify, there's 2 different ones. It could be 2 different ones depending on your understanding. So I listed all of them here for you. So remember the teacher-centered strategies. There was command style, practice style, reciprocal, self-check, and then self-selection, and then the student-centered was guided discovery, problem solving, and then individual program or exploration. So you decide which teaching style or 2 that you think this was, and describe yourself in 4 to 5 sentences. So you can write that response right about here, okay, beneath that table. So yeah, there could be 2 right answers there. The rest of them are not right, so just make sure you're selecting the appropriate teaching style. Part D, what were the critical elements that the teacher uses to teach the skill of the underhand throwing? Just to give you a heads up here, she did not really teach these in the same way that we would normally do it. Typically, you would teach this right in the beginning of the lesson as part of the warm-up, but I think because the nature of how this was filmed, that part was cut out so that we could really get to watching the students practice. So you're going to hear these critical elements in greater detail as she's actually teaching and providing feedback to the students. So again, this is where I want those direct quotes of what she's saying or how she's describing this skill. It's okay if they're not all direct quotes because she does rephrase them in different ways throughout the entire lesson. So do your best with these, but there should be between 4 and 5 critical elements that you hear. So again, how she wants her students performing the skill. Part E is looking at those 6 learning time codes. So describe the extent to which students are involved in each of these following categories. So provide examples or describe situations to me in terms of what you're seeing. Give a specific timestamp if you believe the students are engaged in this. So wait time, were students involved in extensive wait time during the lesson? Describe. And if you think that they were or were not, you can use timestamps to just kind of further explain yourself. Activity time, describe if the students were or were not involved in an appropriate amount of activity, specific skill learning time or not. Management time, transition time, knowledge time, and off-task time. Just answer those questions there. I kind of helped to guide your thinking. So just answer those questions. Part 5, or F, sorry, open your grade level outcomes document. With this grade level outcomes document, which indicator is most appropriate for the underhand throw? So she's teaching the underhand throw, so I want you to tell me what grade level outcome she's teaching to. This is probably like maybe a 2nd or 3rd grade class. I'm not really sure. I can't remember. But just tell me from the K through the 5, tell me that indicator. So again, it's going to look something like this. So down in your response here, you'll tell me, you'll fill in these blanks, okay? And this can be a range because it goes across multiple grade levels at that elementary. So again, just make sure that you're focusing on the E for elementary, right? And tell me the indicators here. What would be really awesome is if you want to copy and paste them from that grade level outcome document so you can see how they differ from kindergarten through 5th grade. Okay. And then part G, describe the teacher's demonstration of the skill. Did the teacher demonstrate multiple times from multiple angles? Did the teacher explain the critical elements of the skill while demonstrating? Did the teacher slow down the skill and then demonstrate in real time? And did the teacher demonstrate or have a skilled student demonstrate? So again, these are some of the criteria of the effective demonstrations. So I just want you to evaluate how this teacher demonstrated. All right, so that's that video analysis document. This is going to be really cool. I can't wait to see your responses to this because it's really showing your acquisition of learning that content that we really studied for the midterm. So that's what that document is. All right, so let's get to that lesson plan assignment, that PowerPoint. So we're working on writing lesson plans in phys ed. And so what is a lesson plan? A lesson plan is a daily plan for what you plan to teach that day. So typically you're going to have a lesson plan for every single time that you step in front of students and teach them, specifically at a certain grade level. So I just wanted to give an example here. You're going to have one for each grade level or content area for each day. So this is just an example of like if you were to be teaching a middle school, if you were teaching a middle school, if you teach middle school that has 9 class periods per day, let's say period 1 is 7th grade PE, 8th grade PE, then 3rd period is 7th grade health, then 4th period is 8th grade health, 5th period you have a planning period, 6th period's lunch, and then from 7th period, 8th period, and 9th period, you're teaching 6th grade PE. So, oh, but it looks like last period, ninth period is 6th grade health education. So I want you to think, why don't you pause the video and count how many different lesson plans am I gonna need to prepare just to teach this day? So remember, you need a different lesson plan for every grade that you teach and every subject that you teach. So every time that I teach 7th grade phys ed, I need a 7th grade phys ed lesson plan. Every time, so that's 1. Every time I teach 8th grade phys ed, I need its own lesson plan, so that's 2 lesson plans so far. Every time I teach 7th grade health, I need its own lesson plan, so that's 3 lesson plans. Anytime that I teach 8th grade health, it's its own lesson plan, so that's 4. 6th grade phys ed, I actually teach 6th grade phys ed twice, so I only need 1 lesson plan because I'll be just teaching that lesson plan twice, so that's my 5th lesson plan. And then 6th grade health is a different lesson plan as well, so that's 6. So in order just for one day of teaching, I have 6 lesson plans I need to prepare. All right, so that just gives you an idea of how much work goes into planning and teaching. And just know that your lesson planning it'll get much easier. It's really tedious and it's really time consuming in the beginning while you're first learning it, but it's going to get much easier as you plan more and more frequently. So the answer to this question was 6 lesson plans just for one day, and then you need however many you need for the next day based on your schedule as well. What does a lesson plan include? So a lot of you have seen the template already. Some of you have already filled it out, and I'm providing you feedback now on your lesson. But daily objectives are the main part. So that's what you want your students to learn by the end of your class. So by the end of the day, what do you want your students to walk out of your class knowing how to do, or knowing cognitively, or maybe demonstrating affectively? Typically, you're going to have 1 objective in each domain, so 1 psychomotor, 1 cognitive, and 1 affective. Your lesson plan also has critical elements. These are descriptions of how to perform the skill that you plan to teach. So those critical elements, you remember that you need 3 to 5 critical elements for each skill that you're planning on teaching. So For example, with that video analysis, she's teaching the underhand throw, and she has about 4 or 5 critical elements. So those are the descriptors of how specifically to do the underhand throw. Assessment, how are you going to measure student learning for that day? So are you going to watch the students perform the skills in the psychomotor domain? Cognitively, do you want them to write down the cues or the critical elements for that skill that you are teaching? Affectively, are you going to be watching that students are maybe performing collaboratively together or using effective communication skills? So how are you going to measure student learning during that class period? So that's something you can include. And then content development. These are your planned tasks or your activities. So all of the activities that you have planned for that day, you're going to list out in a sequential manner, such that you start with your easiest task and progress to your hardest task of that day for those students. Components of the lesson plan. Again, you can see the lesson plan template is in D2L. This template is often modified or changed. So as you go through the program, little things may change, specifically to get maybe a little bit more in detail than the version that you see right now. But just know that once you learn it and you learn it well, it gets easier and easier to do each time, and you're going to be able to write lesson plans in virtually no time over the course of your years. There's a self-help menu, so you'll see highlighted in the template, there's this little yellow, I'm going to show you because I don't want you to be confused. This is the self-help. Okay, so you can see I'm just putting my cursor over it and I can click on that help, which brings a drop-down box, and that drop-down box explains exactly what I'm looking for here. So this is the self-help for the grade level outcomes, and it says list the outcomes directly addressed in this lesson, include the standard number and the standard element, only include the standards actually addressed during this lesson. It gives you the link for the grade level outcomes, which you already should have saved in your computer. And here's an example of what he's looking for. This is that shape, this is that grade level identifier, and then that statement that goes along with this identifier. Okay, so make sure that you know that these are here. So if I forget what an objective is, I can click on this help component here, click the drop down, and it explains everything I'm looking for regarding your objectives. All right, and this goes throughout the whole entire document. So those help boxes are there to help you write your lesson plans effectively. Okay. So now we were going to practice if we were all in class together, but I want you doing this on your own, and you can submit it online for participation points. So anytime I have a group activity going on, take notes, type it up into a Word document, and you can submit it for participation points. So objectives, we're going to practice writing these. Identify what students should know and be able to do, but are more specific to the activities of that day. So refer to the guide for writing objectives that I showed you earlier. It's up on D2L. Read that especially if you haven't watched the other lesson plan video. But essentially what we're looking at is these tell me what the student should know and be able to do before they walk out of my class at the end of my class period. It always starts with students will be able to. SWABT is fine as an acronym. And usually, as I mentioned, they're in the 3 domains. So you have a psychomotor domain objective, an affective domain objective, and a cognitive domain objective. You remember from studying for the midterm that the psychomotor is the doing or the performing type of objective. So you're looking that students can actually do some skill physically. Affective is looking sometimes that students value different movement, or that they are working collaboratively in group type settings. So this one again, it's more of they'll kind of be demonstrating, they'll be doing something physically, but usually it's relating to like communication or problem solving, working in groups, or valuing or appreciating some type of physical activity or movement. And the cognitive domain is always looking that your students are learning in their brain. Okay, so this is where you can't really physically see people learning in their brain. So the words that you're going to use here, the verbs, the action verbs, are going to be things like that students need to identify maybe critical elements or compare and contrast offensive and defensive strategies. Things that typically, usually in the cognitive domain, the way that we usually measure this is by writing a response to some type of a question. So it, use words and write those in such a way that you would measure that cognitive learning, that thinking, usually takes place with a pen and paper or pencil and paper, or discussing verbally your response to some type of a question. So components of the objective, there's the audience, the action word, and the outcome or the product. So the audience is always that who are you writing subjective for, which always is going to be students will be able to, or that SWABT. So you always start with SWABT, BAT, whoa. Then you're going to move to the action word. So students will be able to what? Choose some verb that is relating to the product and specific to your domain as well. So demonstrate, identify, or value. So students will be able to demonstrate or identify or value something. What is the outcome or product we want? What is the actual piece that we want our students to be able to do before they leave? So this should relate directly to the tasks that you're teaching. So if you're teaching about offensive strategies, then students will be able to demonstrate a give and go as an offensive strategy during Ultimate Frisbee. That was my psychomotor. Students will be able to identify the critical elements of a give and go during Ultimate Frisbee. That was my cognitive. Students will be able to value the importance of a give and go for progressing the ball toward the net during Ultimate Frisbee. Oh, well, Ultimate Frisbee, so imagine I said Frisbee. So if they're valuing the importance of something, then they are in the affective domain. Okay? So these are components of the objective: audience, action word, and product. They all need to be listed in that way. Here's some examples. Student will be able to, which was the audience, correctly move, which is the action word. Move is our action word. To open space. Open space being our product. So under critical elements of your lesson plan, you're going to list the 3 to 5 cues that you would use for moving to open space. So teach me how to move to open space in 3 to 5 critical elements or cues. Example 2. Students will be able to, which is the audience, accurately describe being our action word, the basic components of a 1-2 zone defense in basketball, which is our product. Okay, so under critical elements, we're going to list the 3 to 5 cues for a 1-2 zone in basketball. Okay, so here we're looking that somebody can describe some kind of an action word. Our describe is our action word, so if they're describing something, you're working in the cognitive domain. You have to verbally or with pen and paper describe something. Up here we were correctly moving. That's a physical aspect that you're actually moving. You're physically moving, which is the psychomotor domain. This example 3, students will be able to, which is the audience, demonstrate, which is our action word, positive teamwork during a nitro crossing activity. So if we're demonstrating positive teamwork is typically something you would find in that affective domain. So your critical elements in your lesson plan would be 3 to 5 cues describing how to demonstrate positive teamwork. What are you looking for? So what are you actually looking for students to be doing that exemplifies positive teamwork? And again, this example 3 is an affective domain. So here's where we were going to go into our breakout rooms. So for participation points, do just this, okay? And then you can submit it to Blackboard, or D2L, sorry. Come up with 3 objectives, 1 in each domain for the selected activity in the middle school. So imagine you're teaching middle school. and you're teaching an invasion games, offensive and defensive strategy unit. So I gave an example. Here's a few different invasion games. So invasion games typically are where one team is taking the ball or the implement, the object, into the other team's space to score. So examples of this would be soccer, basketball, hockey, rugby, lacrosse, handball. There's many more, but stick to one of these 6. All right, so you can choose any of those sports that you want. And imagine you're teaching these sports at the middle school level, and you're teaching offensive and defensive strategies for these one of the sports that you choose here. So what I'm looking for, this is how you'll get your points, is your sport type is invasion. I already chose that for you. Tell me which sport you chose right here. And then write a psychomotor objective, a cognitive objective, and an affective objective. And again, if you feel like you need a little more practice with this, read through objective writing guide, that guideline document. That document really explains in greater detail how to write objectives. But all of them will start with your audience. The student will be able to give me some type of describing word or action word, and then what product. So what specifically are you looking for students to be able to demonstrate or cognitively tell you or affectively demonstrate with a group. Okay, so that's all you would need to submit for this part. Just to give you some hints in case I know some of us are early on in our PE careers, these are some common strategies of all invasion sports. So these might help you to write your lessons, or your objectives. So if you wanted to work on offense, you could talk maybe about maintaining possession, avoiding defensive players, creating space for your teammates, creating space for yourself, and attacking the goal. If you wanted to write your objectives about defense, maybe you would talk about defending the goal, defending space, gaining possession, defending positioning, a defensive area coverage, predicting an opponent's movement, or you could talk about common tactics, which is to create space while invading your opponent's territory, to contain space with the opposition of invading your territory, or to use a net, goal, or target for scoring purposes. So these might help you write your objectives if you need. So before we go on, I want to show you in our lesson plan, your objectives will be listed here. So I gave you a little bit of a hint. Psychomotor, you're doing or performing something. Cognitive, you're thinking or your knowledge about something. And, oops, this is supposed to say affective. Affective are your feelings, emotions, values, or social skills with a group. Okay, so you'll write your objectives here, and I already put that student will be able to in there for you. Okay. So the next piece on our lesson plan, as you just saw, are the critical elements. So critical elements, these really describe how to do a skill. So you're going to list 3 to 5 for each domain. So describe sequentially how to perform the skill. And it must be observable, so you can determine if the student meets that objective or not. So I'll describe what I mean by that. Make sure that these critical elements align directly with your objective, and you can see what I mean on this next slide. So in our first example, these are the same objectives from the previous slide. Students will be able to correctly move to open space. Okay, so for the critical elements that you would put on your lesson plan, then for this objective would say, to move to open space, these are the critical elements. You need to look for the gaps in the defense, move toward that gap, and be ready for a pass from a teammate. So these would be the critical elements I would list on my lesson plan. I'm going to show you right here. So if my psychomotor objective was moving to open space, I would list those critical elements here. And again, you need 3 to 5. So example 2 was our cognitive. Students would be able to accurately describe the basic components of a man-to-man defense in basketball. If I wanted students to describe man-to-man defense in basketball, perhaps maybe I would make them either tell me or tell a partner, or maybe they needed to write those responses down on an exit slip or a piece of paper before they leave class so that I know that they learned. But the critical elements, so again, how to use man-to-man defensive basketball, I have them listed here. Find the offensive player who needs guarding, stand between that player and the basket, follow the offensive player wherever they move, use a defensive stance, and be ready to intercept a pass. So those would be the critical elements I would list on, because this is a cognitive objective, because we're looking that they describe these things, not that they demonstrate, they're describing it. I would put that in my lesson plan under the cognitive. And now to get at that affective, students will be able to demonstrate positive teamwork in a nitro crossing activity. Okay, so if this was positive teamwork, the critical elements of positive teamwork, or how to demonstrate positive teamwork: players use positive communication skills, players work together to solve problems, players exhibit active listening skills, players work together to move across a playing field. Okay, and these are all the components for how to use positive teamwork during our activity, and again, that's our affective objective. So now in the breakout room or by yourself, I want you to create critical elements for the skills that you just said you were planning to teach. So in your psychomotor objective that you just planned, you wrote your objective, you already have your objective there. So now beneath that objective, list out the critical elements. And again, I want 3 to 5 for each domain. So make sure that these describe sequentially how to do a skill or how to do something, depending on what you said you were teaching within the psychomotor domain, the cognitive, and then the affective. So again, just you already have your objective listed out. So now just list the critical elements beneath. I understand this is going to be pretty hard for you. Typically, this is easier as you move forward because you have more textbooks to refer to, particular to different skills in this program. Right now, you might not have any, so you can Google some things, or even just kind of make them up based on your knowledge of how to perform some of these skills, if that helps. And if you're absolutely totally stuck and you have no idea how to create a critical element for a certain skill, then just shoot me an email and I can help send you in the right direction. But these should just make sure that they're related to the skill that you say you're teaching in your objective. They don't need to be 100% accurate at this point. I'm just looking to see that you understand what critical elements are. So now you're planning the tasks. And again, these are just the major components of the lesson plan. They're not all the nitty-gritty pieces. In the lesson plan, you also need to address safety and equipment and a bunch of other things. But I just wanted to hit the big ticket items. So tasks should teach the skills that you indicated in your objectives. A task may teach to one or more of those domains. Okay, so you said what you told me in your objectives, what you're teaching, and then now your critical elements describe how to do those skills, and now you're going to develop that in the tasks or the activities that you plan to teach during your phys ed class. So for example, I may teach psychomotor objective, which was moving to open space, while also asking students to use positive teamwork, which would be my affective objective. So you can, in one activity where we're moving to open space and practicing moving to open space, I also want students to use positive teamwork, because obviously you need to work as a team as you're using offensive strategies. So this is an example of how I was able to target a psychomotor domain objective and an affective objective in just one task. So here's the example task that I would write in my lesson plan. Students will work in groups of 3. One partner will start with the ball, which is the offender. One partner will act as the defender, and then the other will be another offender who's going to run toward the goal, trying to find open space and get ready for the pass. So basically, one partner is throwing to the other partner as they are moving toward a goal and trying to get open, where the defender in that group of 3 is obviously trying to prevent us from making a successful pass. So the 2 offenders should plan how to move to open space and move away from the defender before each trial. So they're going to do this 3 times. They're going to try 3 times to get a successful pass as the offender is moving toward the goal and moving to open space, while also staying away from the defensive player. Each offender will throw to the other offender 3 times before the students switch roles. And when they switch roles, the thrower is going to move to the running offender. The running offender is going to move to be the defender now, and the defender is going to move to be the new thrower. And then they're going to do this again with 3 more throws. Okay, so that's my task. So now in your breakout room, I want you to plan a task that falls within the psychomotor domain and in the cognitive domain. So again, you told me you had your, on the last activities, you had your objective and then you had critical elements. Beneath it, you can just write your task. So the psychomotor, describe your task here. Make sure it's aligned with your psychomotor objective and describes and teaches the critical elements that you said were important. Within your task 2, make this one cognitive. So describe your task here. Cognitively, typically, cognitive objectives typically ask students to write out a response, either verbally discuss their thinking with another student or display their thinking in some type of way. So remember that this is just thinking. So you're going to be describing how students are going to share their knowledge either with you on paper or with a partner during some type of activity. So add this to your participation document and you can submit that. One thing you need to make sure you're planning for is transitions. In transitions, that's a transition between activities. So imagine here that you have 24 students in the 6th grade with floor hockey. They're working on dribbling and floor hockey. So you need to describe to your students during this lesson how to get equipment, how to set up the playing area, how to move to designated space in the gymnasium, how to clean up a playing area, and how to return to the teacher for maybe a closure. So the teacher is going to say several things to the students during the lesson. So let's say I just did my introduction. Good morning, boys and girls. Today we're going to be learning floor hockey, specifically dribbling today. I need each one of you to go get yourself a hockey stick and a puck. Go yourself 1 hockey stick and 1 puck, and then return back to me for further instructions. Ready, go. So imagine the students go get their stick and their puck, and they come back and they're standing in front of me with their equipment. That's how I just planned for transition of equipment. Now I need them to set up their playing area. So imagine I need them to set this up on the left. So I would say something like, all right, students, I need you to get in groups of 3. One of your partners is going to go over and pick up 4 cones. I need those 4 cones 20 feet apart in a square in the gymnasium. So maybe I already have a demonstration square laid out so the students know what it looks like. So take a look at what this area looks like. I need one of you to go get 4 cones, go set up your square, 4 cones in a square, 20 feet apart, ready, go. So now they're setting up their playing area. Move to designated space. So this, using this picture on the right. So you can see the gym is split up into 1, 2, 3, and 4 quadrants. Or even 1 quadrant, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 quadrants using all the lines in the gym. So you might say your students, all right, so in each group of 3, I want you to go find one of the 8 quadrants that you just, set up in with your cones. You set up your squares. So there's a set of cones or squares here. So that's quadrant 1. 3 of you go here. 3 of you are going to go to quadrant 2. 3 of you are going to go to quadrant 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So go ahead and find yourself in a quadrant, and I'll give further instruction once I see you all in your correct space. Sometimes you might want students to help you clean up a playing area, especially if you have a lot of equipment out. It's really helpful to have your students help you pick this equipment up for you. So maybe using this picture on the left, so maybe it's at the end of the activity we need to clean up the gymnasium. So boys and girls, we're finishing up the lesson for today. When I need everybody in front of me, but on your way, please bring your hockey stick, your hockey puck, and all 4 of those cones that you just used for your playing space. So go ahead and return those all back to the designated buckets, the hockey sticks, the pucks, and the cones, and then stand in front of me for our closure. and then return to the teacher for closure. So I kind of just did that one as well. So boys and girls, I need everybody sitting or standing in front of me so we can close up our lesson and plan to leave class today. So those are all transitions. So between tasks, you kind of have students do a bunch of different things with equipment and with space, and that's how you plan and talk about your transitions with the students. So you'll need to do this in your lesson plan assignment as well. So your closure, when you're closing up a lesson, you always want to readdress the objectives for that day. So those go back to the 3 objectives that you taught: the psychomotor, affective, and cognitive. So boys and girls, today my goals for you or my objectives for you were to demonstrate a give and go during soccer. I also wanted you to be able to identify and describe the importance or identify and describe moving to open space, how to move to open space with teammates. And I also wanted you to be able to discuss the importance of offensive strategies to I don't know, advance scoring and identify the value of using positive teamwork to improve scoring opportunities. So that was me readdressing the objectives that I had maybe in my lesson plan, and I kind of just came up with those. So just make sure you remind the students of those goals or remind the students of those objectives that you had for them during the day, but then ask them questions to review their student learning. So again, relating to the objectives. So boys and girls, I wanted you to identify and describe how to move to open space. So can somebody tell me how we learned to move to open space today? Can somebody tell me the importance of using positive teamwork to help advance scoring? Can somebody tell me the critical elements of moving to open space when we are attacking the goal? So you ask students to reiterate their knowledge of the day to you. So don't just tell them, ask them those questions is very important. Also, you can usually give a sentence or two to preview what's going on next class. So next class, when you come in, we're going to be working out some defensive strategies. So that's really going to help us get our small-sided games going now that we have our offensive strategies, and then we're going to work on defensive strategies next class. All right, see you later. Something like that. So you're kind of previewing what they're going to be learning next class so they can kind of get excited for that. So those are all the elements of the lesson plan that you need to have. Those are the major ticket items. But again, when you go to your lesson plan template, there's more in here. Okay, so for your homework assignment, this is your homework assignment, your first one. Again, it's graded. The topic is going to be learning to serve to open space in volleyball at the 9th grade level. You have 45 minutes and a class of 20 students. I already planned the grade level outcome for you. You're going to plan these 3 objectives. Make sure that they are correct: psychomotor, cognitive, and affective. Make sure that you're not mixing these up. Talk about safety. So what things do the students need to be aware of in the gymnasium to be safe? What equipment and how much equipment are you going to need? Really important that you tell me here is how much. So if I need 20 volleyballs, you need to tell me I need 20 volleyballs. If I need 6 volleyball nets, then you need to make sure that you tell me that. The more specific you are, the better. Tell me those critical elements for how to perform the skill. So if I'm teaching learning to serve to open space in volleyball, learning to serve is a skill, but also to open space is another concept. So you can take this in either direction that you want. Probably you should do the serve as your psychomotor, so the serving skills. Cognitive is maybe how to find open space, and then affective, maybe working in groups. It's up to you. If you use the critical elements like I just mentioned, make sure that those also align with what you wrote in your objectives. So give me those critical elements. Assessment. So how are you going to measure students that they met your psychomotor objective? Remember that this is usually something, they're demonstrating something. So usually the teacher's watching or observing, using some type of scoring assessment or rubric to grade or rate their performance. And then the cognitive, how are you going to measure your students met their cognitive objective? And remember, this one usually is a verbal response either to you or to a student, or it's a written response on a piece of paper. So you just describe how you're going to measure their learning at the end of class. Floating tasks, basically I'm looking for your warm-up, so describe a short warm-up for your class. Try to stay away from those walking around the gym, those boring warm-ups. We'll learn something soon in some of your upcoming classes about instant activity. It would be really cool if your warm-up is related to volleyball, so that we're kind of already getting ourselves amped up to get into that volleyball unit. Talk to me about a managerial task. So describe how equipment can be laid out for your activities today. You can use a diagram here if that's more helpful. So your managerial, typically your biggest piece is setting up equipment. So just describe to me how you're going to have your equipment laid out. Or sometimes it's helpful if you create some type of a diagram. So usually I'll go into here and I'll use like shapes, and I'll say like this is the gymnasium, and I'll use a whole bunch of more pictures and stuff to kind of decorate and describe my gymnasium. Transition tasks. So what will you say to the students to get them in front of you to learn about the first activity, and do they need any equipment? If so, tell them how to get the equipment that they need. Do you need them sitting or standing? So talk to me about the transitions between the activities, if your equipment changes or if you need students to get equipment or put equipment away. Introduce your lesson, so follow this guide. And then you're only going to plan the first task. So this is introduce the task, which is serving to open space in volleyball. So describe how you're going to have your students set up, different grouping. Are they in partners, any groups of 3? Are they working by themselves? And what they're going to be doing during this practice skills. This is not a game. They're not in a game setting. They're only practicing that serve. So they're serving over the net, usually to open space. So describe your task. You have a little bit of free reign here. So if you have some really creative ideas, go ahead and show me a really cool task or activity to get students to serve over the net, to open space in volleyball. And then you're just going to tell me a little closure. So describe how you're going to close your lesson, review those objectives, ask questions to see what students have learned. All right. So pretty simple. This is out of 24 points here. You have now 2 different recordings about how to write a lesson plan. You have a sample, you have a quiz, so you have a lot of information available to you to really perfect this. Email me if you need me, but you've really received a lot of instruction here, so I'm hoping that you're going to be all right with that. So I just talked about our lesson plan assignment 1. That's what I just talked about with the volleyball. You're going to do that after watching my PowerPoint, which just went over, and the lesson plan recording from Dr. Comiskey if you need it. I, in the beginning of this recording, talked about the video analysis assignment. So you're going to do that. Read the effective classroom management, which is down here. And then take that lesson plan quiz, which is located under quizzes. All right. I wish you the best of luck. Email me if you need me. I really appreciate your understanding today with me not being able to be in class. And reach out if you need anything. I'm here to help. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you guys on next Tuesday. We'll be in class, so October 20th. All right, I'll see you then.